on QLTV. I'm Jay Sanin, your host, and tonight, in front of a live studio audience, we preview Week 8 in the NFL. Of course, we start tonight with our degenerate pregame show, the pregame show you've always been secretly dreaming of. A pregame show where we don't send it to Rob Riggle for horrible comedy segments. Instead, we talk about betting on Thursday Night Football between the Atlanta Falcons and Carolina Panthers. We also give you the BetQL game of the week, the most exciting game on the schedule, broken down analytically. We also give you quick slants, fast previews, real fast, of every game on the Week 8 schedule. And at the end of the show, you will get my Week 8 NFL selections. We can only hope they go better than the last 2 weeks have gone. Although I guess technically speaking, really nowhere to go but up after the last 2 weeks. Either way, tonight's show brought to you by BetQL. Use BetQL.co or the BetQL app. Over 10,000 simulations of every NFL game. They give you score projections. You can compare those to the spreads and totals, find value in those betting markets, make some money betting on the NFL. Use promo code Sanin at BetQL. Save 20% off all subscriptions on the site, whether it's for 1 week or a year, anything in between. Promo code Sanin will save you 20% at BetQL.co. So let's get right into it because we got a lot of stuff to do tonight. We have a lot of betting to talk about here in week 8 of the NFL season, and we will start, ladies, with Thursday Night Football. That's right. It's your degenerate pregame show. Falcons, Panthers tonight. Falcons coming to this game 2-point road underdogs, total 51.5. Now, folks, this is a game where there is a large statistical mismatch at hand. Carolina Panthers allowing a full yard less per play than the Atlanta Falcons this season, also gaining more yards per play on offense. Panthers, explosive in the passing game, not something you'd expect. You talk about Teddy Bridgewater. He's not a flashy quarterback. This Carolina offense, known for their running game with Christian McCaffrey, who we'll talk about in just a little bit. But they're tied for 4th in the NFL in terms of yards per pass attempt this season, averaging 7.1 yards every time Teddy Bridgewater gets rid of the ball. And why is that important? Because tonight they take on a Falcons defense that is dead last in the NFL at defending the pass. They give up 8.5 yards per pass attempt to their opponents. Abysmal defensively. And you look at their schedule, it's not as if they've played a murderer's row. They've played some tough passing offenses in the Dallas Cowboys, for example. But for every one of those games, they played the Detroit Lions. They've played the Chicago Bears and Nick Foles / Mitchell Trubisky, that very disappointing duo in Chicago. So it's not as if they've played nothing but strong passing offenses. They've even played the Carolina Panthers earlier in the season. We'll talk about their first matchup in just a moment. But what you need to know right off the bat is that there is a strength versus weakness situation in this game, as the Carolina Panthers should be able to exploit a less than stellar pass defense for the Atlanta Falcons. You could see an explosive performance from Carolina here tonight. Now, there's also a weakness on the other defense. If we flip the script here, you look at the Carolina defense, they struggle to stop the run. In terms of their run defense, they are allowing almost 5 yards per carry. The question is, can the Falcons punish them for it? Now, they did in the first matchup between these two teams. They gained well over 100 yards on the ground. The problem is they weren't able to convert those runs into points. Atlanta, not a good running team over the course of the entire season. They are one of just 9 teams averaging under 4 yards a carry for the season. And of course, with Todd Gurley as their running back, you would expect much better than what they've been putting out in that facet of their game. Now, you also look at the pass offense of this Falcons team, and you think, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, you have some solid tight ends in the mix, Matt Ryan throwing them the ball. They've been kind of a middle of the pack offense in terms of their passing game. And Carolina just so happens to be one of the best pass defenses in the NFL. They are in the top 5 in yards per attempt against when opposing quarterbacks manage to get rid of the football. So things to keep in mind there statistically. Now let's look at the last game for both of these two teams. What are these teams coming off of? And they both happen to be coming off of heartbreaking losses. The Saints defeated the Carolina Panthers last week. A game that could have very well been tied at the end of regulation had Bridgewater not taken a bad sack and forced the Panthers to attempt a 65-yard field goal near the end of regulation. Had he not taken that sack, he'd be looking at something in the 50s in terms of a field goal attempt, which is very makeable for Joey Sly. Instead, 65 yards, Sly misses it short, and the Panthers lose by just 3 points. You compare that to the way the Falcons lost last week, and boy, this team, I mean, they must be cursed with the way they lost last week. Todd Gurley has an easy road to just lay down. Falcons can run out the clock and kick a game-winning field goal. Instead, he just kind of stumbles into the end zone accidentally. How you accidentally score a touchdown is beyond me. He managed to do it. The Lions march down the field, score a game-winning touchdown against the Falcons as time expired. Now, both of these heart-wrenching defeats, however, you look at the context behind them, and you'd say if you're the Panthers, you lose by 3 to the Saints on the road as a touchdown underdog. That does not hurt you nearly as much as the Falcons losing the way they did to a Lions team that really they were right there with in terms of the spread. It was very competitive throughout, and really Vegas expecting a close game there. You have to be more disappointed in the way the Falcons fell apart than the way the Panthers lost their contest. Now, you talk about the injuries in this game because those very important. Christian McCaffrey will not suit up tonight for the Carolina Panthers. They did not activate him for tonight's game. Of course, this matters in the running game, but Carolina has managed to adapt pretty respectably without McCaffrey in the lineup for Carolina. They've been 3-3 without him so far, just about as good as you can ask for, especially when you factor in the fact that they have a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, and a new starting quarterback there in Carolina. You have to be impressed with what they've done without McCaffrey. On the other side, Takk McKinley, solid pass rusher for the Falcons. He is going to miss this game. And what does that do? That means an already bad pass defense is going to have an even worse time getting after the quarterback here tonight. And again, that lends itself to the idea that Carolina could have a huge game in their passing offense tonight. Now, an interesting fact related to the Falcons heading into tonight's game. This is only the second game all season that the Atlanta Falcons have played outdoors. All their home games, obviously at home, indoors. Now, compare that to their road schedule. They played the Cowboys indoors. They played the Vikings indoors. Their one road game outside this season came against the Green Bay Packers, where they got smacked. They lost by 2 touchdowns in that game. Obviously, being outdoors doesn't necessarily put them at a disadvantage, but when they're dealing with the elements, we might have some rain in the forecast in Carolina tonight, combined with the fact that the defense is abysmal for the Falcons inside, let alone in a surface they're not used to. You could see some ugly play from the Falcons here tonight. I am rolling with the Carolina Panthers in this game. And I say that now so you have 10, 15 minutes to go lock in your wagers. Do whatever you got to do ahead of the game. I am laying 2 points with the Panthers tonight. They have been a better team so far this season, despite the fact that they haven't had their best player. And everything statistically points to the Panthers in this contest. They have proven already they can defeat the Falcons. And I think they will do so again here tonight. You look at that first matchup too, and you always want to look through these games, watch them back, and see if anything fluky has taken place, anything that would skew the final result. And if you look at that game, I mean, Carolina, they won the time of possession battle, outgained Atlanta by nearly 100 yards, gained 1 yard per play more during that game. Only 1 turnover in the game as well. It's not as if Atlanta went out there and committed 4 turnovers, something that'd be hard to replicate. Carolina didn't turn the ball over once. The Falcons turned the ball over 1 time, and that was the difference in the game. I expect a similar result tonight. I really do. I think Carolina comes out at home, gets the job done, and they move their record to 500 on the season. And of course, Christian McCaffrey coming back next week against the Chiefs. That's what it's looking like. You can get him back at 4-4. All of a sudden, these wild card spots in the NFC might still be up for grabs. So that is the play tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I have the Carolina Panthers -2 taking on the Atlanta Falcons tonight. I've seen some better numbers out there. You might be able to find a 1.5 as well. Whatever you do, good luck on Thursday Night Football. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your degenerate pregame show for Panthers Falcons. I hope it was more enjoyable than watching Terry, Howie, and Jimmy pat themselves on the back. So we'll move on from Thursday Night Football to the Sunday slate, and we will start with our BetQL game of the week, folks. That game, by the way, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Steelers, 3.5-point underdogs. Total is at 46.5. Now, it's worth noting for this game, boy, it's a little weird, right? The undefeated Steelers coming off a huge win, 3.5-point underdogs. Well, let's dig into that. And you have to start with the scheduling spot for these two teams. Baltimore, they come off a bye week last week. They're rested up. They're ready to go for a game that could very well decide the fate of the AFC North. You compare that to the Steelers. They just played an absolute meat grinder of a game against the Tennessee Titans. They win the game, but they looked rough in that second half. Tennessee did a great job of coming back from a double-digit deficit. And once Steven Gostkowski field goal goes differently, that game could have been going into overtime last week. Let's not forget that. It's not as if the Steelers went out and ran the Titans off the field for 60 minutes. They needed a missed field goal, a very makeable kick at the end of that game just to hold on to their lead. Now, this week, again, I think the Ravens rested up, ready to go for this game, as opposed to a Steelers team that had to empty the tank last week. And now they go into their second consecutive road game against a Super Bowl contender. I don't think that ends particularly well for the Steelers more often than not. Now, both of these teams, top 5 in the NFL in terms of their yards per play allowed. They are both excellent defensive teams. So if you want to give a look at the under, I get it. I personally am not playing the total here because both of these offenses still do have the potential to break out at any given time. But again, you have two elite defenses, both teams kind of in the middle of the pack, maybe a little bit below average in terms of their offensive abilities against other elite teams. But we'll see if that bears out, again, because of the scheduling that these two teams are dealing with. Now, Baltimore, their yards per play average pretty low compared to what you'd expect for a team that does so well in the regular season. But you have to remember that is because they lean so heavily on their running game. Baltimore, number 1 in the league in yards per carry this season, averaging 5.4 yards every time they tote the rock with the running game. Well, again, you have a strength versus strength situation here, as the Steelers have one of the best run defenses in the league. They allow less than 3.5 yards per carry, and we saw them make Derrick Henry and the Titans offense struggle for chunks of that game. They didn't do it for 60 minutes, but you saw them make the Titans get off to a slow start, which was enough for them to propel themselves to a victory. So strength versus strength here, but you have to remember, this isn't a conventional running game that the Ravens run. Yes, they do love to give the ball to Mark Ingram and the other backs there, J.K. Dobbins as well for the Ravens, but you have to factor in the Lamar Jackson factor in the running game for Baltimore also. He's capable of breaking containment and making plays with his legs at the quarterback spot in a way that, let's say, Ryan Tannehill last week was not as able to do. Now, last week we talked a lot about the advantage the Steelers had over the Titans with Taylor Lewan, the star offensive lineman, being out for Tennessee. That didn't bear a ton of fruit, only 2 sacks in the game for the Steelers, but you can expect potentially even less than that against a healthy Ravens offensive line and a team with Lamar Jackson, who, again, he can get outside of the pocket when he feels pressure and extend plays in a way that Ryan Tannehill simply cannot. Now, the Ravens, they have all that going for them, but it's worth noting they did fail their last big test. That was, of course, Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. There's a key difference between playing the Chiefs and playing the Steelers. Just like we talk about Lamar Jackson being able to get outside the pocket and extend plays. Patrick Mahomes was able to do that for the Chiefs against Baltimore. Ben Roethlisberger is not that guy, especially at this point in his career. If anything, he extends plays in a bad way by holding on to the football for too long. That could be a problem for Pittsburgh here in this game against an aggressive Baltimore Ravens defense. Steelers, off a big win, they strike me as something of a square dog in this game. A lot of people are going to say what I said at the top of this segment. How is an undefeated team a 3.5-point underdog? 3.5, an interesting number, by the way, because that extra half point tends to lead people into taking the dog. Oh, great. I get to take a field goal and an extra half a point. Generally, the betting public will jump at that opportunity. I am going to go the opposite way here, and I am going to take the Baltimore Ravens to cover the 3.5 points. I just think at this point in the season, with the Ravens just having a week of rest and the Steelers coming off of the toughest game they'll play all season, with the exception of any games against Baltimore, I don't think that bodes well for Pittsburgh. And again, that 3.5 point spread is kind of begging you to take the Steelers. Good idea to go the other way. Now, what does BetQL have to say about this game, folks? After all, this is the BetQL game of the week here on the GBI show. BetQL has projected the Ravens as 5-point winners, indicating a 1.5 of value if you do decide to take the Ravens. I'm going to do exactly that, and I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens minus 3.5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers in your BetQL game of the week. Of course, the BetQL game of the week brought to you by BetQL.co and the BetQL app. Use promo code Sanin at the bottom of your screen, 20% off all subscriptions for you to get intelligent NFL betting data for either 1 week, the whole season, whatever you want to do. Use promo code Sanin, 20% off at BetQL.co. So, folks, we are at halftime here on the Gridiron Betting Insight Show, and it is time now for the fastest, or I guess the slowest, or whatever you want to call it, 15 minutes in sports betting. It is Quick Slants, where we go through every NFL game very quickly, give you some key numbers, key information that you need to think about before you place your NFL bets this Sunday and the rest of the week. So here we go. Quick Slants, folks, and we'll start with the Indianapolis Colts. They are 2.5-point favorites at the Detroit Lions, total of 50. Colts fresh off a bye. Lions fresh off of that buzzer-beating win over the incredibly cursed Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Colts defense has feasted on bad teams this season. We've seen them against better offenses like the Cleveland Browns struggle to find their footing. Detroit, meanwhile, still hard to tell how good they are. Of course, we saw them blow a huge lead to the Chicago Bears early in the season. Lately, they've been feasting on bad teams themselves. They've racked up back-to-back wins against the Jaguars and the Falcons. Not exactly accomplishments to write home about, but hey, they're a 500 team despite some early season stumbles. Now, the Colts' better production on both sides of the ball statistically. However, there's something about Ford Field where the game typically ends on some kind of wacky play because the Lions either can't hold on to a lead or they get super fired up when they fall behind, and it ends on one team's goal line in some kind of ugly way. And if you think I trust Phillip Rivers to avoid falling into that same fate, I've got a bridge to sell you, because I don't think that is the case. I don't like either team in this game. You can't trust either one of them. I made the mistake of trusting Phillip Rivers a couple weeks ago against the Browns and then again against the Bengals, and I regretted it dearly. I will not make that mistake again. I will lay off of this game entirely. Next up on Quick Slants, Vikings, 7-point underdogs against the Green Bay Packers, total of 51. This is a game we saw earlier in the season, and the Green Bay Packers absolutely wrecked the Minnesota Vikings on the road in Minneapolis in that early season contest. Now, since then, Minnesota has done a nice job of finding its footing offensively, even if their defense has been horrendous. Vikings, second in the league in yards per play this season. You might not think that by looking at Kirk Cousins and the rest of that roster, but they have done a nice job of stretching the field with the passing game, something I think the Packers are especially susceptible to with their issues in the secondary. Does that mean I'm going to take the points with Kirk Cousins against Aaron Rodgers? It absolutely does not. I'm going to lay off this game. I think if there was a play to be made in this game, you can make an argument for the over, but I don't think it's worth it. I think that these two teams are going to play each other a little closer than you saw the first time. Whether or not that falls within that 7 points remains to be seen. Patriots, next up on Quick Slants. They're 3.5-point underdogs against the Buffalo Bills. AFC East matchup total 41.5. And this is a massive game in the AFC East. The Bills already 2 games up on the Patriots at the top of that division. They win this game, they could create a ton of separation while also planting even more doubt in the minds of this Patriots team that has been terrible since their COVID-induced bye week. Of course, they lost to the Denver Broncos 18-12. And then last week, 33-6 losers against the San Francisco 49ers. Both of those games at home, by the way. Now they take to the road to take on one of the better offenses in the NFL in the Bills. The Patriots, if they're going to win this game, it's going to come through them controlling the clock and enforcing their will with the running game. Patriots, one of 7 teams averaging 5 yards or more on the ground this season. However, their passing game has betrayed them. Tom Brady gone. Cam Newton has not picked up the slack. Patriots bottom 10 in the league in overall yards per play because their passing game has let them down to that level. Defense hasn't been much better for the Patriots as we've seen Drew Lock and Jimmy Garoppolo enforce their will on the Patriots these last couple of weeks. Now, the Bills have not been a great defensive team, as you know, they haven't been great either on that side of the ball, but they're kind of middle of the pack in most statistical categories. And what I like about the Bills here is that this is a game where the reputation looms large for both of these teams, right? Usually, when the Bills play the Patriots, it typically ends with the Patriots dropping some sort of anvil on the head of the Buffalo Bills. Not this time, I don't think. I think the Bills are clearly a better football team. They're at home. They have a better quarterback for the first time in decades in this matchup, and I think they take advantage of it. I am laying the 3.5 points with the Buffalo Bills. And again, I hope I do not live to regret that decision. But I think, again, perception versus reality versus with these two teams is extremely important. Next up, Tennessee Titans, 5.5 point favorites on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals, total of 53.5. Now, the Titans, again, they just came off of a very difficult game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Very well could have won it, at least sent it to overtime. Steven Gostkowski misses that field goal toward the end of the game, and Tennessee suffers their first loss of the season. On the other side, the Cincinnati Bengals, they lost in heartbreaking fashion as well last week. Back and forth game, went way over the total. They ended up losing by 3 to the Cleveland Browns as Baker Mayfield made that key pass to Donovan Peoples-Jones in the end zone right near the final whistle. So both of these teams off of tough losses. And here's what you need to remember when it comes to this game. Cincinnati playing at home. They've played a couple of good teams tough in that building so far this season. They played a great game week 1 against Tyrod Taylor and the Los Angeles Chargers. Of course, since then, Tyrod Taylor has been replaced. But they also played very well last week against the Browns at home. You cannot rule out the Cincinnati Bengals here this week. And against a suspect Tennessee defense that's allowing a lot of points lately. They gave up, 36 to the Texans, and then they gave up 27 to the Steelers last week. They're a defense that is clearly not at the top of its game. And that's where Joe Burrow has had success this season. He's struggled against good defenses, but against the bad ones, he has taken care of business. Over 400 yards last week against the Browns. You can't rule out the Bengals here. I'm not going to go either way on this game. I don't think it's enough points. If it was around 7, I think I'd take Cincinnati, but anywhere in that no man's land between 3.5 and 6.5 is going to be a no-go for me. Next up on Quick Slants, Raiders, 2.5 point dogs. They are at the Cleveland Browns. Total down to 51, by the way. And this is a game we made a pick on Tuesday. We said over 53.5. You can now get a better number on that total if you want to take the over 51. We mentioned it last Tuesday. These teams have played 13 combined games. Only 2 of them have gone under so far this season. There was also one push. The 2 unders coming in Browns games against the Steelers and Ravens, who have proven they might be 2 of the top 5 teams in the NFL so far this season, against teams that aren't elite, against teams that are not at the top of the league right now. 10 overs and 1 push between these 2 teams. We'll take our chances with the over here, as I think Baker Mayfield continues to play well, and Derek Carr, he can shred that Cleveland defense. If Joe Burrow can do it, I think Derek Carr can do it as well. Now it's time for the biggest spread of the week, ladies and gentlemen. It is the New York Jets, the winless New York Jets, 19.5 point dogs against the Kansas City Chiefs. Total 49. One of the biggest spreads we've seen for a while in this league. Reminds me of those Jacksonville Jaguars teams around, 2012 or 2013, where they had those, half yellow, half black helmets. And they ended up getting 26, 28 points against the Peyton Manning Broncos back in the day. This is what that reminds me of. You have Patrick Mahomes set to tear apart the listless New York Jets. You also have Le'Veon Bell, who was a Jet a couple of weeks ago, set to take the field for Kansas City. Can he get in the end zone and get a little revenge on his former team? That remains to be seen. Now, the Jets did get their first win against the spread last week against the Bills. They covered the double-digit number. I think it closed closer to 9, but they ended up losing by 8. Got their first win against the spread, still winless straight up on the season. Huge offensive mismatch in this game. Kansas City gaining 1.8 yards per play more than the Jets so far this season. They should, by all accounts, the Chiefs, demolish the New York Jets this week. We're not going to lay 19.5, just on principle. Don't lay 19.5 points in the NFL. Garbage time. Teams can walk it up the field and hit you with the back door. No reason for that. But I'm not going to take that many points with the Jets either. I'm going to lay off of this game and just hope it doesn't get too ugly. I'll watch it with my eyes covered as Sunday unfolds. Now, an interesting game that we'll preview right here. Los Angeles Rams, 3.5-point favorites against the Miami Dolphins, total of 46. Tua Tagovailoa, the rookie quarterback from Alabama, he will make his first career start for the Dolphins. Again, Dolphins playing some decent ball this season. They're a 500 team. Dolphins decide at the bye week, okay, we're going to turn over the keys to the rookie from Alabama. Of course, Tua's reward for getting in there now, you get to face Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and the rest of that Rams defense that allowed just 10 points on Monday Night Football just a few days ago to the Chicago Bears. I would lean to the Rams because of Tua's inexperience, but they have yet to accomplish anything on the road, and that's what gives me pause in this contest. The Rams on the road, they have 2 wins against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are abysmal, and the Washington football team, also abysmal. They have lost on the road to the Bills and the Niners, 2 decent teams. Dolphins kind of somewhere in between those pairs, right? They're not a train wreck like the Eagles and the football team. They're also not playoff contending team, like the Eagles, like the Niners and the Bills. So I'm going to stay off this game. I want to see how Tua plays, and he's going to deal with some pressure in this game. I want to see how he responds to it before making any bets for or against the Tua-led Miami Dolphins. Next up, we have the Saints minus 4.5 against the Bears. Of course, the Bears just coming off a humiliating defeat on Monday Night Football. Saints off of a narrow victory against the Carolina Panthers last week. I usually like the contrarian spot of taking 4.5. It's getting up towards 5 at some books. I like that contrarian angle, but I do not like it with Nick Foles and or Mitchell Trubisky as my quarterback. You can't trust them to put up enough points, especially against a solid New Orleans defense. I'm going to stay away from this game, but I like the spirit of taking the points with the Bears, if that makes any sense. Go next to a matchup in the best division in the NFL, folks. That's the NFC West. Game is the Niners +3 at the Seahawks, total 54. Of course, the Niners off that blowout win over the Patriots last week. Seahawks lost in overtime, 37-34 to the Cardinals on Sunday Night Football. The problem with this game is we still don't have a full picture as to how good these two teams are. The Niners have beaten a lot of bad teams lately, right? The Niners coming off a win against the Rams. We're still not sure about them as the majority of their wins have come against the NFC East. They then go and beat the Patriots, who have looked terrible over the last 2 weeks as well. Seattle, huge concerns in the defensive backfield. We could see Jimmy Garoppolo have a huge game, but again, we could see Russell Wilson outduel him up there in the Pacific Northwest. This is a game that's usually close between these two teams. A lot of contests between these two sides over the last couple of years decided in the final minutes. I don't need to have a heart attack this coming week, so I'm going to stay off of the Seahawks and the Niners. Chargers Broncos up next. Broncos a 3-point dog at home, 44.5 the total. And this is a huge litmus test for Justin Herbert and this Los Angeles Chargers offense. Herbert killing it this year. Top 5 in yards per pass attempt are the Chargers so far this season. But now they go to Mile High and they play a very strong pass defense in the Denver Broncos. And of course, Bradley Chubb still around to get after the quarterback, even if Von Miller is not. Broncos got their blocks knocked off by the Kansas City Chiefs last week at home in the snow. You thought if there was ever an opportunity for the Broncos to keep it competitive with the Chiefs, it would have been in that weather at home. Didn't happen. I'm staying off of this game only because I think the Broncos pass rush can disrupt Justin Herbert, who is a rookie who hasn't played a ton of great defenses yet. But I also don't have any faith in Drew Lock, who has really soured. A lot of people have soured on Drew Lock over these last couple of weeks based on how bad the Denver offense has been. Now let's get to Sunday Night Football. And folks, I am so tired. I'm so tired of the NFC East being on Sunday Night Football. It needs to stop. Dallas Cowboys, 9-point underdogs. It's getting up to 9.5 against the Philadelphia Eagles. And it is going to be Ben DiNucci, owner of DiNucci's Pizzeria, taking on the Philadelphia Eagles at quarterback, as Andy Dalton is not in the game. He will miss this one due to a concussion. DiNucci, by the way, I did some research on him. I now know who he is. He played for James Madison in college, the FCS football powerhouse. But while he was out there in the Colonial Athletic Association destroying William and Mary and the University at Albany Great Danes, I don't think he has what it takes to play against teams in the NFL just yet. He showed that with an abysmal performance in mop-up duty against the Washington football team last week. With that said, no one in their right mind should lay as many points as the Philadelphia Eagles are laying in this game with the Philadelphia Eagles. We saw it last week. They couldn't contain Daniel Jones. The turf did a better job of containing Daniel Jones than the Philadelphia Eagles defense. That's a problem. I'm staying off of this game. And I'm turning off this game. I am not watching this game. I am protesting the NFC East being on in prime time. Finally, in quick slants, our Monday Night Football game. And of course, that's another NFC East team. Why not? Why not? Just a double feature. NFC East at night. Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New York Giants. Game's off the board right now. It was a 12.5-point spread, total 45. However, New York Giants offensive guard Will Hernandez tested positive for COVID. 8 members of the New York Giants, between the players and coaching staff, not at the facility here today because of that positive test and potential for transmission and contact tracing and things of that nature. Of course, recently you had video of Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley out there living it up without masks. So who knows? We might not have a Giants-Buccaneers game on Monday Night Football. And you know what? I am fine with that because I do not want to suffer through another edition of my New York Giants getting embarrassed in prime time. Of course, the Bucs playing arguably the best football in the league right now. 2 weeks ago, they scored 38 against the Green Bay Packers. Last week, they scored 45 against the Las Vegas Raiders. Who knows? Maybe they would have increased that total yet again by putting up somewhere in the 50s against the Giants. We might not have to find out due to the COVID situation. We'll see if the game gets flexed to put another game on the Monday night schedule so ESPN doesn't lose out on its primetime slot. We don't know. A lot up in the air due to the COVID-19 situation. Of course, we will keep our eyes and ears on it. But as of right now, Giants and Bucs off the board. So with quick slants in the books, let's look at our Week 6 picks for this week. We have the Panthers tonight. 2-point Atlanta Falcons. That game already underway if you are watching live. Next up, the Ravens 3.5-point favorites over the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. Over 53.5 in the Browns-Raiders game. Of course, again, you can get 51. You can get a lower number now. You can take advantage of that. And the Bills, 3.5-point favorites over the New England Patriots. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the GBI show for this Thursday. We'll check back in with you on Tuesday. We will recap Week 8, tell you what we learned. We'll go upon further review and hopefully celebrate a great week of NFL picks as opposed to what we've seen the last couple of weeks. And of course, we'll have a lot more fun. We'll get you an early Week 9 pick on Tuesday as well. Until then, good luck with your bets. Don't forget Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. coming up this weekend. Can't wait for that. And of course, everything else in the world of sports as well. So good luck with your bets. Have a good night. We will see you next time here on the GBI Show.